Let's get started. Tonight, the moment of silence is going to be followed by the national anthem performed by Liberty High School's Chamber Choir, as well as the Pledge of Allegiance by Ryan Pulbrick, a fourth grader at Apache.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, staff recognitions is our first thing up tonight. Mrs. Aries?
Well, good evening, President Pingarelli, members of the board, Dr. Stifler, and a very special thank you for that incredible performance that we just received by the Liberty High School Chamber Choir under the direction of Joshua Chamber. If we can give them just one more round of applause for that. And a very fitting way for us to be here this evening celebrating National Arts in Education Week, and that's what we are here to recognize this week. There are, of course, so many different aspects of how we support, foster, and nurture a strong arts education program across all of our 42 schools here in the Peoria Unified School District. Our schools have been celebrating, we've been celebrating here at the district office, which has been particularly fun for those of us, thanks to the efforts of our arts education team. But we're here tonight to bring you a little bit of a flavor of that, so we thought it'd be fitting to have students come and join us, and these young men and women were fabulous representations of what arts education is all about, and of course Liberty High School as well. So thank you for joining us for that. As I said, we're celebrating Arts Education Week, and that wouldn't be possible without the wonderful duo that we have here at the district office that makes all of that happen, runs all of our arts programming. I'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize our director, Mr. Robert Panzer, for all that he does, and Justina Riley, who certainly supports that as well. A big, big thank you. Can you stand so we can recognize you? They're incredible, and we're not even going to begin to talk about the Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival that we already started planning for, but certainly that celebration of the arts that takes place in the spring is possible thanks to the work of Mr. Panzer and Mrs. Riley. So we really appreciate the two of them. You may have noticed when you came in, or if you've spent any time here in the district office, we do have a wonderful exhibit in our lobby of art. It's great that they changed that out for us to be able to enjoy a little bit of our schools here in our district office, and certainly for the community members that come through this building, as we do have quite a bit of them here. But this is a faculty showcase, which is exceptionally cool, really. And you can see there woodwork from Mike Abeda, our district locksmith. So something kind of interesting that our district locksmith has such incredible art talent. So we're pleased to celebrate all of our faculty that have artistic talents and to highlight them there as well. There's another employee here in our district that we'd like to recognize as we're talking about and celebrating the arts, and it's a special recognition. One of our teachers was recently nominated and then received a very prestigious award in the world of arts education. Mrs. Jennifer Pulbratek, a new ceramics teacher and visual arts teacher from Cactus High School, just received the Art Educator of the Year Award from the Arizona Art Education Association. So a very prestigious award. I'd like to have her stand so we can give her a big round of applause. And I'll call her up in just a moment, but before I do, I want to share just a little bit about this award with you all. Each year, the Arizona Art Education Association honors outstanding colleagues who bring distinction to the field of arts education. Those who are nominated are done so for making a positive difference for the visual arts in schools. Jennifer's instructional planning and practices are described as second to none. Her nominator shares that she serves as a model for teachers, both in her content area and for others. She's known for being enthusiastic and willing to share her resources. She utilizes new techniques in her classroom to enhance her students' experiences, and she's described as being tireless in her efforts to reach all students and to help them to meet their full potential. Now, what's exceptionally cool about her receiving this award is, as you may have caught when I first started speaking, she's brand new to our district. So just showing, to a side compliment, I think, to our Human Resources Department, we're hiring the best here in Peoria. So we thank her former district for giving her to us, and we're certainly so glad to have her as a new member of our team, but we had to stop and celebrate this award. And even though it's based on some of the work that she did in Dice Art, we're so thrilled that we have such an exceptional educator that we were able to get her here and have her at our very own Cactus High School. So if we can give her one more big round of applause. And unfortunately, we just have such a short time for our recognition, but I know you all know that the list of accolades and recognitions, we could talk about the arts. It's so important to this district. It's so important to what we believe in shaping the whole child. We really could go on and on. We wanted to bring you just a little flavor of that this evening, and of course, recognize what we're doing up at Liberty High School, at Cactus, and we know that what we're doing in arts education, thanks to our teachers, is really permeating throughout the district. So, at this time, I will invite Mrs. Pulbratek to come on up, and I'd also like to invite, we have on behalf of Liberty High School, I believe we have a student that is going to come here for you as well, so I'll let her introduce herself to you, or is it, who do we have? Perfect. Rachel from Liberty High School coming up for you. So we'll have her alongside Mrs. Pulbratek. So certainly she'll be representing the Liberty Choir. And if there's anything you'd like to ask or offer up to either of them, I'll turn them over to you, President Pingarelli.
Thank you. Let's start with Mrs. Connect.
Let me just say to the Liberty Lions Choir, unmatched. I mean, you sounded as beautiful as any choir I've ever heard sing the national anthem. Really beautiful, flawless. Made me goosebumpy, so thank you. Thank you, and I love the idea of bringing our student artists in to share their work with us. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of time that you put into it, so thank you for that. And Ms. Pulbratek, you didn't have my kids, but my kids did go through ceramics at Cactus High, and I have little tchotchkes all around my house. Yay. So hearing about your success is personal, and it's it makes us very proud. And thank you, and welcome to the PUSD family.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Mrs. Monica Seja Martinez.
Good evening. First, speechless. And I don't do that very often. Speechless. Not only your voices, but your composure and your body language and the joy that you see from your face. Speechless. Thank you. Mrs. Pulpertick, thank you for choosing us. There are many choices, and I'm so glad you choose Peoria.
Thank you.
Mrs. Doan.
I would like to echo that. We're very glad to have you with us, and congratulations on your award. And to the choir, I would like to say there's just something every song is supposed to do. And you know what it is when you hit that note, the land of the free, and it sends that little chill up your spine? It's very good, effective, good singing. Thank you.
David.
Yes, so agreed with all of my fellow board members here. You guys are fantastic. It was beautiful. The smiles on your faces and clear confidence, certainly attributed to, the leadership across the district, Ms. Politik, Mr. Panzer, all those who are focused on, the arts within our district. Danielle spoke to, really kind of educating the whole child, and certainly these programs, augment all that we do throughout the district and clearly result in confident, adaptable students like yourselves. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment to what you love and what you're passionate about. And just thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, for the choir, that was absolutely amazing. Our daughter is in choir, has been for years, so I know exactly how hard it is and how much practice, and I appreciate your director for his expertise. And for the ceramics, I've never had any background in it. I really appreciate that you chose Peoria, and we were very, very happy to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here, so.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and thank all of you for coming.
Yes.
And President Pingarelli, I'll just close with one more thing for all of our board members, at least. This was just the warm-up with Liberty High School. I believe you'll all be able to, should you be joining us next, or on the 26th, at the ASBA meeting that's taking place at Liberty High School. We'll get to once again enjoy the sounds from the Liberty High School and, of course, Mr. Schaefer. So just the warm-up, more to come from them. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And if you guys would like to depart and go do homework or eat dinner or something.
You can hear our voices.
Yeah. Well, the only singer here that is really, really good is Miss Doan. So, I mean, I can speak for myself, I'm not, but if you want to go have some dinner or whatever you'd like to do this evening, don't feel that we want you to or have to stay here. So it's a good time to take off. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Mrs.
Right.
Pingarelli?
Yes,
Can I give a couple more shout-outs?
you can.
Thank you very much. 3 things. 1, a number of our schools had special events on their campuses in honor of the tragic events that took place on September 11th. As the years pass and we get further away from that tragic day in 2001, we appreciate that our staff and students take a special moment to reflect on the thousands of families who were affected that day. I got to attend at Lake Pleasant and got to sit right next to Mrs. Seja Martinez and Mrs. Connect. And I think they will take time to tell you how powerful that was. Also like to brag on at Country Meadows, the junior high band there, let me say this again, the junior high band there will be doing a combined concert with the Glendale Community College Band on the evening of October 3rd in the Country Meadows cafeteria. Well, the Glendale Community College group has performed with high school bands many times before. They have never performed with junior high, so this is exciting. Many thanks to Rachel Piskey, the band teacher extraordinaire at Country Meadows, for working with GCC to offer this exciting experience for her students. And last, I'd like to say we love and appreciate all that took place this week and even this evening to celebrate Arts and Education Week. Next week, we look forward to highlighting Internet Safety Week. It's not quite as fun, but it's also important. And the kickoff of our district's 6th annual anti-bullying art contest. Details about that are available on our district's website. Here endeth the report.
All right. Well, Mrs. Connect, I'm going to steal your thunder because I know you have the shirt. You stand up and I'll.
Sorry, and I'll model it.
Okay. We were all supposed to wear the T-shirt, but. Judy, yeah, I gave Judy yours. It's in a bag.
We all agreed we were all going to wear the shirts. No, I wore the shirt.
Well, you can stand up. So
Yeah, it's in the bag.
it's in the bag. So I just wanted to, before Mrs. Connect steals my thunder, I wanted to take this time to honor the Peoria Panthers Wrestling Team Boosters Club, who held an event this Saturday. It was a great event. They had a golf tournament initially, which I didn't go because I don't play golf, but I do eat, so I went for lunch. So it was a very good time. And I just wanted to thank Miss Irene Haro for the invitation, and a special thanks to the head coach as well as the volunteer coaches who dedicate countless hours to teach our students about perseverance, commitment, and facing the challenges of competition, both in victory and defeat. So thank you for modeling.
Thank you for your commentary. It was spot
Okay.
on. And it's a really cool logo. And yay Panthers, it was a lovely day.
Okay,
It
what,
was a lovely day.
would you like
It was a
to
good
take
team.
over?
No.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let's see, how about Mrs. Doan? Any board recognitions? And I didn't tell you, but I did give you the T-shirt.
Yeah. I would like to say I thoroughly enjoyed the ASBA Law Conference. There was a lot of good information there, a lot of interesting speakers, and some ideas that we're probably bringing back. And it was very, very good, very informative.
What's good?
Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, I would agree. The law conference, I think for me, going to those conferences, it's always nice to talk to other individuals from other districts to understand best practices and, where we can maybe take some of those wins and apply them in our district. So that's certainly a benefit. But going to the golf tournament, I think one of the things that we always talk about is the district and its collaboration. It's, synergistic approach with the community. And, when, we arrived at the tournament, at the luncheon more specifically, there's upwards of 100 players, if I'm not mistaken, individuals that not only were teachers and staff and coaches, but also individuals from the community. So it was clear when you saw that passion and that collaboration amongst those different groups, all focus on one thing, our students. And it was it was an honor to be there, and certainly a pleasure to see that all in action and see those individuals truly focused on, what we're all focused on here, which is our 37,000 plus.
Thank you. Mrs. Sierra Martinez?
Wow, you guys, check. We were busy. First, start off with an echo, Dr. Stifler being invited by Lake Pleasant, Ms. Wood, and Ms. Wagner, National Junior Honor Society and Student Council, breathtaking. Goosebumps in the ceremony. I just went to New York and visited the memorial, and my hearts go out to those families, and I'm glad that we honor our history. So thank you. In addition to that, I went to the ASBA Law Conference as well to join my colleagues. Our governing board nominated me to be our delegate, and it was a wonderful, great experience. There were a lot of new governing board members participating in the process. To sum it up, between a conversation, Kathy and I, we agreed that it is a representation of all the governing boards across the state. We have WestMec there as well to bring up issues, to push forward to our government relations at the state level. So I believe that is a great job. I represented Peoria. We moved forward with our list of requests. With that, going forward, the wrestling, definitely like to highlight. And one thing I want to say is the camaraderie around the public education system and specifically the wrestling community. We had Dysart and I believe Tolson represent as well from other districts come support our Peoria High School students. So it's nice to see that we're one family in the public school system. And I challenge all of us, if we have the opportunity to go to other districts, to learn from them as well. It was a busy week. Dr. Stifler and I have 100% attendance. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we've been together. Yesterday, we had the honor to join our administration at Park Ridge Elementary School, the PTSO dinner. We saw new faces and we saw returning faces. Great speech by Mr. Ken Hicks. Positive reality. Sometimes that is needed. For finance, Mr. Steve Savoy, safety first always, thank you so much, and Ms. Wendy Davy presenting about our statistics here with our data. And one quote I need to end with is, we make sure, as Ms. Davy said, one piece of data, one test does not determine the fate of our child. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.
I have one, too. Thank you for talking about the important things that I was able to do as well. But I am tardy recognizing a former student whose mother wanted to shine the light on her accomplishments. Her name is Alyssa Santa Cruz, and she went to Sunrise Mountain, and her mother is one of our teachers at Sunrise Mountain. And Alyssa was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to participate in Dublin, Ireland over the summer.
Wow.
Prestigious and selective academic honor. And when her mom told me about it, I said, by all means, I will share that with our board meeting. And like I said, I'm a little late doing that. I should have done that a meeting or so ago. But wow. And what a great reflection of the high-quality education she received here in PUSD. So if you're listening out there, congratulations to you, and go on and do great things with your Peoria Unified Education and your Fulbright Scholarship. So.
All right.
Mrs. Pengerelli, I forgot one thing, I'm sorry. It's a busy week. So Tuesday, and how can I forget, because I see orange right in front of me. Our governing board also, we all volunteered, and I am the representative for the CTE Advisory Board for our district. Saw Dr. Stifler, met Mr. Donovan, and we met at the central campus off of the 101 in Glendale. Everybody needs to go. Phenomenal. And the resources that our students have to go to there, hands down awesome. So thank you for the collaboration and the invite to that central campus. Okay, that's it.
All right. And since you did mention orange, I failed to mention, we do have two WestMec school board members here, Chairman Barb Wiley and my husband, Peter Pingarelli, who's here most weeks. I drag him here. All right. Well, thank you very much. Next item. Request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. Do we have anything this evening?
I don't believe
Take it
so.
not. Okay. All right, next item. Consideration of approval of the consent agenda. Does any member need to pull anything from this week's consent agenda? Nothing. Okay, then I would need a motion and a second to move it forward.
I move to approve the consent agenda item.
I will second. Members, please cast your vote. And it passes 5-0. Next agenda item is agenda item number 15. Address agenda and consider adoption or recommended changes. Does any board member need to change the order of the agenda?
No.
Nope, okay. We'll move on to agenda item 16. Discussion and consideration to name Ironwood High School football stadium to the Chuck Estebal Football Stadium. Mr. Croto? Welcome.
Thank you. President Pingarelli, members of the board, Dr. Stifler, and guests, it's my honor and privilege this evening to come before you with a proposal to name the Ironwood High School Stadium after Chuck Esquivel. Who is Chuck Esquivel? Dedicated district employee for 32 years and a Spanish teacher at Ironwood High School. Was also a very successful coach at Ironwood High School, along with being a very respectable community member. We do have a policy, governing board policy FF, on naming facilities. It allows us to bring forward to you name of a person or a significant event or historical event or a location to name and recommendations forward to you. This is more the governing board policy. I'm not going to read the entire policy. I know you're probably familiar with that up front. So the plan to dedicate the stadium, Ironwood is planning to do that on Friday, October 6th, if you approve the recommendation. They will recognize Coach Esquivel for his contributions and have his family at the game. And they're going to do a public announcement at the game. That is their homecoming, I believe. Yes. That weekend, and also place a memorial plaque on the press box, which you see in the picture here. That's Ironwood. Those are the windows. The memorial plaque will be placed to the left of the eye on that press box. How was the initiative supported? The initiative was supported mainly by parents and students coming forth to the Ironwood administration in honor of Coach Esquivel with a proposal to name the stadium after him. Past and present, they all supported Coach Esquivel. They signed a petition and brought it to the administration in honor of naming the stadium after Coach. And with that, we will take some questions. I have Mr. Mark Borkowski here, our assistant principal at Ironwood High School, and we'd love to answer any questions or anything you have about naming that stadium.
Okay, I'll start with Mrs. Doan. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
No questions, but quite an honor, and certainly, obviously, I should say, an individual that is part of the Peoria pride and of the community and of the campus there at Ironwood. So I think it's this is a great way to celebrate those individuals who certainly have served our district for so many years. So thank you.
Mrs. Sejar Martinez?
No questions at all, but thank you, and we'd be honored.
Mrs. Connect?
Oh, I'm all in favor, but I'm looking at the picture with, of the field, with, where it says Ironwood over the windows. So where's the plaque going to go?
Next to the eye in the Ironwood,
So those are covering the windows?
those are in the windows.
In the windows.
Just when
come
the
out
stadium's
for the
not
game.
being used.
Okay. That was where I was confused about. Okay.
They're placeholders, make it look
Okay.
fancy while the game's on.
Looks nice from 59th Avenue.
That makes sense. I appreciate that. No, I'm all in favor. Thank you. Good idea.
No, I thank you very much for coming this evening and for the presentation. I have no questions, and I'm wholeheartely in favor of going ahead with this. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Mrs. Pingarelli, I
yes.
move to approve the proposal.
Second.
All right, members, please cast your votes. All right, next item. Item number 17, discussion and consideration of approval to realign governing board policy with Arizona School Boards Association. Dr. Davidson?
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening, President Pingarelli, members of the board, Dr. Stifler. Tonight, this agenda item is focused on, as you can see in the background piece there, a simple realignment and a revisit, working alongside ASBA to really take a look at our entire policy manual. And tonight, we recommend that you consider approving the purchase of Arizona School Boards Association services at $500 to support the review and realignment of our policies to those recommended by ASBA.
All right, let's see, I guess let's start with, this is, actually, are we going to do it, have a motion and a, yes. Let's get back to,
I move to support the discussion and consideration approval to realign governing board policy by using ASBA services.
I second.
all right, then, I guess let's move on to discussion. Mrs. Connect?
Oh, I'm in favor of this because I was on the board before we used ASBA, and we would go through a section at a time, and I think altogether, the book would be about this big, and I think that what the time and energy it would take our staff members to do the alignment would cost way more than $500. I think it's a smoking deal.
I would like to second that as well. It is a smoking deal.
Just saying. Does anyone else remember that? Steve remembers those books. Yeah. Whew.
Mrs. Sehar Martinez?
Definitely, I agree. I believe when I first started, one of the very first comments I stated as a new governing board member, and what I've been reminded as a governing board is we do have the autonomy to review our policy and make it what's best for Peoria. So using ASBA's efforts and reviewing our policy that it's aligned, definitely. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Doan?
Works for me.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, using a thought leader to help guide us through this, that's the bargain basement price of $500 is a fantastic deal, so thank you.
Yeah, I have no questions. I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Great.
You know, actually, I do have one question. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. We can't see that.
Yeah, just go ahead and ask your question.
No, you know, I just wanted to know, like, how many policies we're not in line with, how,
Well, we won't know for sure until we
until
get
they
their
actually
help.
look at it.
But
Well, that's
50-ish?
Okay.
Is that a fair number, Carter?
Dr. Stifler, I think it could be less, it could be more, to be honest with you. I think what we would do, President Pingarelli and members of the board, they will come in and sit
Right.
with Dr. Stifler and whomever he seems to sit alongside him and review section by section, not only from what we have policy-wise, but then take a look at best practices regarding
Right.
regulation and how laws have changed over time. Maybe some of those things we do on our own, maybe we should consider changing, or some of those things that the law has required to change and maybe we haven't moved yet on, they will help us find those. And then with...
That's a more professional answer than mine, Dr. Carter. Thank you. But I'm going to tell you anyway where the 50 came from. I know that since 2012, there have been recommendations that we have not acted upon as a district.
Okay.
And I have seen that list, and I'm trying to think of how many as I look at, and that's what I'm envisioning. But it has all of those other pieces that Dr. Davidson is saying as well. So we have hanging recommendations dating back to at least 2012 that we did not decide for or against on. And especially for the last 3 years, we have rarely done any of those. And so the law has changed considerably. I believe it's in our best practice, in our best interest to make sure that we're aligned with the law.
And if I may, to address your concern, are we still able to maintain the flavor and the culture of Peoria? We absolutely are. And so our staff members will be sitting alongside ASBA to make sure that we stay there. And it's things like, they don't call them addendums, but things that are attached to the policy. They'll make sure that all the supporting documentation that we need is on there so that all of our I's are dotted.
Okay, sorry to interrupt the voting, since I called for it.
I still vote yes.
Okay. Okay, I guess members, please cast your vote if you haven't voted. All right, passes 5-0. Okay, next agenda item number 18, discussion and consideration of approval of contract addendum for impacted administrators. Dr. Davidson?
Hey, well, good evening again, President Pingrelli, members of the board, Dr. Stifler. This agenda item, as you can see, was provided in conversation with one of our district attorneys, as well as, I think, Ms. Pingrelli as governing board president. And it was recommended to us that we rectify discrepancies in contracts for revised revised expectations for those contracts of travel and proper reimbursement for impacted administration. And so we look at the recommendations, and I believe you have two items that I left for you on your chair or at your desk tonight, just to support the conversation. And we would recommend that you consider approving the form, which is the contract addendum, as well as the opportunity to properly reimburse the impacted administrators for those revised expectations for travel.
All right, thank you very much. Well, on this one, I'm going to change it up a little bit, kind of back to our old ways of discussion and then motion, just to see the feel of the board. And on this one, I will take priority to go first. I did have a prepared statement that I would like to read. As a school district, we must always operate within the boundaries of policy, contracts, and state statute. A number of travel payments that were granted to selected administrators seem disproportionate in my view. Moreover, travel allowance payments with no reporting accountability is concerning to me. Additionally, I feel that prior to implementing such an action, executive leadership did not adequately inform or consult with this governing board. And when I initially discovered these travel payments existed outside of employment contracts, I was told it was okay. As a result, significant time and money were expended in an attempt to understand and correct the situation, money that might have been used in our classrooms. Now a number of administrators are impacted because the law was not followed. To be clear, I support administrators and teachers being reimbursed for all school-related business, but not at the expense of accountability and transparency. I do not fault administrators who received these payments, but I will not support changing an original employment contract with the addendum as presented. I believe that travel payments made outside of employment contracts should immediately stop, and further recommend that the district's finance team work with affected administrators to account for mileage and/or reimburse the district with as minimal impact as possible on the employee. As a board member in the future, I request review of all such travel allowance amounts before the issuance of any new employment contracts. All right, let's start with Mr. Sandoval.
The reporting on this allowance is, I mean, there is some accountability to these dollars, is that correct? And how they're accounted for?
The accountability, sir, I believe would be seen in the expectations as given by the superintendent. And many of those individuals that were impacted would be direct reports. And so therefore it would come through the evaluation process, through the way in which the superintendent would like to be those things to be seen.
Gotcha. And the overall goal here is to kind of make those whole whose contract didn't reflect this allowance originally. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
The intent of tonight's agenda item, yes, sir, would be to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Doan?
So how many people do we have that have this built into their contract?
The number, Mr. Hicks, how many are currently with? Sorry, Mr. Hicks, I can respond to that. I found my information. We have 4 of our administrative team members currently with the travel allowance or car allowance in their contract. 5 would be to include the superintendent.
Okay, and why do we think it's best to do this way instead of having travel expenses submitted and reimbursement?
I don't know, Ms. Stone, if my response to that would be a time saver as well as an expectation that the employees that were impacted did not utilize any type of district vehicle.
Okay.
Mrs. Stone, at the top where the attorney wrote, there was a rationale written there as well. Where it says on the administrative contract addendum, and so this is from the district's attorney, in accordance with current district practice when administrator travels to in-state, that first part there.
Yeah.
That is offered as possible rationale.
I think the rationale and the one thing that troubled me was, since the contract was issued, the expectation the administrator visit school sites and otherwise travel on district business has increased significantly. That's where I have a problem if it's changed significantly in the last year.
I believe that it has changed, Mrs. Pingarelli, and what was one thing that was difficult in this is that we issued contracts in April. We advertised, and then we changed positions, and we did not bring back to you. Name changes, duty changes, those were not brought back to you. People signed contracts when everybody in the district signed contracts in early, I don't want to make up a date, but prior to April. And the new positions did not begin until July.
So, Mrs. Pingarelli, the motion is to rectify the discrepancies. And I think I'm hearing agreement throughout the room that that's fine. And this is the proposal of administration on how to do that, is that correct?
The proposal is this administrative contract addendum, and that would be how to do it.
So this is their recommendation on how to do that?
This is our board's attorney's recommendation for us to get back into a legal realm with these contracts.
Okay, but you're dissatisfied with this, is that what I heard you say?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So you said that, and I'm just trying to understand this because this is kind of a little bit nebulous. You're concerned about the amount that's being used as a travel reimbursement?
Well, I'm first concerned that these were added to contracts without ever bringing them to the board after the contracts were issued. The contracts were issued, and then these were added to the contracts afterwards. And what bothers me is that there's no accountability in terms of the mileage. You don't have to show proof of mileage. Everybody else in the district, I believe, does have to show proof. Teachers, school board members, you have to put in your mileage. So that's my concern.
I agree. I would say that the proper protocols were not followed in this instance of making this change. And I think that the problem for me, first of all, I definitely understand, because I've had to do it myself. Keeping track of mileage and fuel usage is a pain in the neck. It would be a burden to both the individuals who are doing it and the staff members who have to keep track of it. However, I think we need to go through that process at least one time so we have an accurate measurement of what should be reimbursed. Does that make sense? maybe not an ongoing forever and ever thing, but if we could, over the course of 3 or 4 months, see what the actual usage is, that would give us a baseline where we could calculate what is a reasonable amount of reimbursement to be added to the contract. And then, if the data supported that, I think we would probably, I don't want to speak for my fellow board members, we would probably say, okay, so the average amount is X, well, for these individuals who are doing this driving, we'll add that on. And that would hopefully, it would, sorry, it would account for the accountability that you're wanting, and in time would alleviate the extra burden for the staff members. Sorry, I had a little, ooh there.
So, and potentially, I mean, that reimbursement could be higher than what's being proposed. So as we take a look at the dollar amount that's on the sheet, how is that derived, based on, certainly mileage, based on vehicle wear and tear, et cetera, across past years, or?
In utilizing expenses that were already in place for our chief financial officer as well as our superintendent, and then considering what that travel recommendation or expectation would look like for those of us that might be in similar roles.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mrs. Pingerelli?
Yes. I was going to go to you next.
Okay. So I look at it from all lenses. First, I'm going to take the opportunity to thank you, Ken, for providing all that information and answering our questions and the commentary. From my understanding, this was not a practice that was done in the past, but just this year due to our organization chart. And the decision was not brought to the governing board. It was a decision made by our executive administration. Is that pretty accurate?
I would say, for the most part, however, I would add, as I've shared before, that this practice was in place. Again, the superintendent and the chief financial officer had the car allowance in their contract.
Yeah, in the past there were 3, now there are 11.
Yes, ma'am.
So the first thing I always bring up is the teacher. And I shared my concerns with Dr. Stifler as well as you. We do have teachers that travel as well on a daily basis because they're split site to site. Not because our current policy says 3 schools or whatever the state aligns. They travel on a day-to-day, but I understand also there are some, we don't get charged if I drive to work and back. The IRS or guidelines do not set up a policy where we can ask for that reimbursement. So I understand that as well, so that they can do their job to the best of their ability. And by own means, if we could afford it, we would get everybody a reimbursement because we're a pretty large district. 42 schools from way up north, which we're growing, and way down south. The first thing you highlighted is changing an original contract. And the first thing that comes to mind are those liquidated damages. We punish people who break their original contract. And so now, if we look at the other side of the coin, we're going to change an original contract for an administrator, but we won't do it for other staff. That's my first concern. 2, it's not on whether we can fix it, because we can. We've had legal representation saying, this is how you fix it. The problem is we've been doing it illegal. And so we're fixing a problem that has been brought to us because it didn't go down the right channels from the beginning. So I have a concern with that. And then the final is accountability, as my governing board members have brought up, is what is the right amount? So I did the calculation originally by .441. There are 3 tiers that were presented in the notes. The second tier, 6,000, but according to this, the last tier is 4,500. But because I used the tier 2, 6,000 at .441, that means that somebody would have to travel 13,605 miles in a school year in 180 days. That's similar to driving to Tucson, round trip. Let's see, more than 35 times, I believe. Let me see, 17. No, that was to Vasantia, excuse me. A lot, basically. Sorry, I have all my numbers here. So I think about those 3 things: accountability, breaking an original contract, which we've already said we did not want to do as a governing board, so we'd be taking back that idea, and then the teacher. If we can't give it as reported in the questions that were answered, to be fair, then at this time, I would have to agree to Kathy and Mrs. Connect and Beverly to revisit to see what is the correct amount, and we proceed in the new school year with the new correct contract.
Are there any other comments?
Well, I'd like to know what we're going to do now to keep us legal.
Well, administration, I think, would like us to do the administrative contract addendum, which states that the administrators are traveling an excessive amount in the district. I would propose that we cease the payment, as I said, and have the employees go back to mileage and reimbursement with mileage, and then have Mr. Hicks's team go ahead and try to figure out a way, the affected administrators, to try to fix this with minimal impact as possible to the employee. I know they've been getting these payments for quite a while,
Since July.
since July.
Mrs. Pingerelli, there hasn't been a motion yet, so failure to a motion that doesn't proceed, it would default to what you just said. That there would be no stipend attached, and that if there was to be reimbursement, it would have to follow the regular procedure within the district using mileage accounts. You would not need to make another further motion in order to do, if that's the aim of the board.
That's my perspective, that is, but I'm only one of 5. So
Okay,
if-
but you said if, so would we be cutting somebody off by not doing this addendum? Or would they be allowed to submit their mileage?
They would be allowed to submit their mileage from this point on, as normal, as you and I would, and then try to work with Mr. Hicks's team to figure out what to do with the past few months, because they have had it in their paycheck.
There is an app that will keep track of your mileage for you.
I know.
There is.
So, listening to Dr. Stifler, from what I said, if there are no other motions than what I had stated in my comments, would proceed?
That would be the default. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But if there is any other feelings on the board different than mine, they are welcome to make a motion. David, are you still looking?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. These positions that I'm looking at, these have not received the allowance in the past, is that correct? Or did we just miss that in their contract?
With the new organizational chart that came out, Mr. Sandoval, those positions, many of them were elevated or were considered new compared to previous ones, and so the title chief wasn't there for those positions, and so therefore they did not have the car allowance.
Gotcha. And then within these roles, the expectation is that they would travel considerably throughout the district?
Yes, sir.
And I agree. I mean, yeah, obviously, we need to have some equity, certainly, across all positions, teachers, and maybe following a different process, because, I don't know that all teachers have the expectation that they're going to travel, some may, but where the position has that expectation within their job description, that's where I see a delineation between the process. Okay, thank you.
So am I hearing no motions this evening? Okay.
I regret the hardship that it'll put on those employees, sincerely, but I think it's It's the right thing to do at this moment.
We've got to be transparent and above
Absolutely.
board.
I think that is the feeling of, I think, every member of the board. Okay, thank you very much. All right, next agenda item. Agenda item number 19. Discussion and possible action to appoint an individual to review an administrator complaint and issue his or her determination and findings to the board's attorney. I'll start this off. I've worked with the board's attorney, and I put together a statement and a motion. An administrator has filed a complaint which was sent to the board president. As board president, I took appropriate steps to inform all board members properly. Tonight, I will make a motion that the board appoint Mr. Don Peters to review the complaint and any other documents pertinent to the complaint. Interview individuals as he deems appropriate, and then issues a determination and findings to the board's attorney. And that's my motion. I'll give you a little bit of background about Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters is a semi-retired attorney who is familiar with public school districts. He is completely independent of the district. Mr. Peters' fees and costs would have to be below the amount required for written quotes. And that is a motion. Do
I
hear a
second that.
All right. Does anybody have any discussion on this item?
I just have a question. The complainant, is that the right word? You know what I mean? Is approves of this process?
Yes, this person does. I was in contact with this person, and so if this motion passes, then they would, I guess, get together with Mr., I guess she would have to approve with Mr. Peters, and they would move forward.
Okay. Of course, I know the decision is ours to make.
Right.
But, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Then members, please cast your votes. Passes 5-0. Next agenda item. Agenda item number 20, discussion and review of policy GCQC, resignation of professional staff members and the liquidated damages clause. Dr. Davidson, welcome back.
Thank you, President Pingarelli, members of the board. Dr. Stifler here tonight to really just engage you in conversation and receive guidance on policy GCQC. Again, as you know, per the background information, we've had numerous appeals to this policy over the past semester. And ultimately, as we begin to prepare for the 18-19 school year and the contract language that is there, as well as the monetary amounts, we just wanted to seek your guidance and engage you again in conversation. I believe there was some information provided, as well as a little PowerPoint I had put together, and some information that was requested through Ms. Ceja Martinez that I was able to send to you guys this afternoon. So that's where we are today.
Okay.
Stefan, do you have the PowerPoint that I had provided in there by chance?
Yeah, it's on the computer.
Say that one more time. Oh. I don't know if the board had time to review that PowerPoint. We could certainly use it as a guide to conversation tonight if you wish, or Mrs. Pingarelli, I'll certainly be here to answer questions and converse alongside you.
Okay.
Mrs. Pingarelli?
Yes.
Do you mind? I can start the conversation. I did
No.
request that this come back.
Yes.
We've had long conversations about this, and last time it was after we sent out the contracts. So making certain changes would be more detrimental to change this whole policy moving forward than it would be in our best interest to leave it as is. As the presentation last time from the from the administration, the governing board, it did not pass. So with that being said, there were some questions about when's the right time. I believe we're ahead of the ballgame right now. And correct me if I'm wrong at any point, before contracts go out, because from my understanding, they're going to be prepared in the near future, so we get the language right and we don't have to do any retractions and delay the process of hiring our wonderful staff. The second thing is deciding where we want to fall with this liquidated damages policy. It was built in the past 2011-12, I believe, in order to diffuse the teacher attrition rate in a current crisis right now that we're facing in Arizona, and to go forward, what's the best for Peoria's culture as well as financially. And we were presented with a couple of presentations this past school year, and what was the cost for the teacher, staff, administrator, for breaking that contract versus is it worth having the policy altogether?
All right. Do we have the PowerPoint up, or? Okay. Okay. No, that's okay. Well, we can, if you want to discuss a little more.
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So where it's changed is highlighted, and it says advancement to a position of higher pay, increased responsibility, and/or at a level reasonably considered to be higher organizationally than the individual's previous position. Now, that means anywhere, right? That is no longer within district. That's the major change there?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Doan. That was the document we had presented, I believe, and it was April of last year, where we were seeking guidance and proposed that as a possible change for those people receiving external promotions. It was not approved, though. That is approved.
So if this would be approved, that would mean there are no damages in that situation, or, okay, it says unless okay, so that means there's no requirement then to have someone to cover there. Like we were talking about, if it doesn't damage our ability to teach our children, if it doesn't leave a gap.
Right.
And there, I see in the following paragraph, such waiver, it's a waiver may be contingent upon the availability of a certified administrative staff member who's qualified as a replacement. But that doesn't relate to the previous bullet point, correct?
I believe all of those items would relate to that, Ms. Doan. That is something we definitely consider. The criteria is established, but we certainly do look at what kind of impact is there on the classroom. And that language, Ms. Doan, is the language that also is pooled, even though this is our Peoria policy and this is a draft that we had presented. That same language on whether there is a replacement is also from the ASBA policy, GCQC. So we did pool that into our Peoria policy.
But that's not, it says that the employees wishing to leave before the completion of their contract will be subject to the liquidated damages clause contained within the contract unless they meet one of the following exceptions. We have 4 bullet points, and then it says additionally we can waive it. So it's like if they meet one of those bullet points, they're completely not liable. But in addition, we can waive if it meets any of these other things we decide.
If I could, I'll direct you to the second slide here, and I think that's that 5th bullet there is one that, remember when we talked last year, there's limited freedom in what the flexibility we have in this policy, and that gives us a little bit of an opportunity. For example, if you might have an employee that's struggling greatly with his or her professional behavior, we can sometimes, it would be in the district's best interest at times to work with them on not assessing the liquidated damages to get them out of their contract.
Right. But I'm just, okay, My question is, there seems to be no contingency in the second bullet point. Well, it says internal there, but it isn't internal anymore. And I thought we were going to add to it that if they move externally, then it needs to be there needs to be a replacement online.
Mrs. Pingarelli, Ms. Doan, we just simply put that in there as historical, that's what was proposed in April. We're not proposing anything going forward. We're listening to what the will of the board is. And so that's merely there as that's part of the, looking back into April, that was a part of the conversation.
Okay, because I was concerned that it perhaps should be attached to that second bullet point, that someone be available to take their position, and not leave us in the lurch.
And Dr. Davidson, since it's up now
Yes,
and you
ma'am.
put so much time into it, do you mind presenting it?
I'd love to
Thank
continue.
you.
Thank you. And remember, this is just simply a guide to
I
the
know.
conversation. The bullet points you see here are what are currently in our policy as we have already kind of taken a look at, and that is what we use in the Human Resources Department to determine essentially what you see on the Governing Board Human Resources Report. Possible policy revisions, these are just some options to consider, and these are some things we had also talked about in the spring. Simply removing the liquidated damages portion of the policy, keeping the policy as is, considering that criteria that Ms. Doan just pointed out from the policy possible revision. To consider a scale, there is one district that we know of that has a scaled rate for liquidated damages based upon the time of departure. You could also consider modifying the amounts as listed in our contracts. And then, of course, as Dr. Stifler just pointed out, we're open for guidance and conversation. Some other items to consider are the ASBA policy itself. As you know, when you look at our GCQC, it's rather lofty, and it has all the criteria, and it talks about some other things. The ASBA policy for GCQC is approximately 2 sentences. And that is what many districts do utilize as their policy. So we can consider that, and I figured that would be part of our policy review as we move into Section G. Again, things to consider, previously drafted changes, as we've already made reference to, other district policies. I was able to contact numerous districts around town, in particular some of our competitors in this market, to kind of hear what they're doing, and I could share that information with you tonight if you wish. And then, of course, those data points that Ms. Ceja Martinez asked for that I provided you today. So those are just some things to consider as you talk about GCQC tonight.
Dr. Davidson, what are the surrounding districts? What do they do? I know you had presented it before. It was kind of all across the board.
Certainly, and I'll share that I am just using some of again, our competitors. Right now, Deer Valley, they voted last year, their governing board voted to not have liquidated damages in their policy. Paradise Valley, right now, also does not have a liquidated damage policy. They do not charge their employees. They do have conversation that's, I think their piece is simply making certain that they have that replacement before someone exits. Washington Elementary School District, they do not have it. And Scottsdale has the sliding scale. So dependent upon when the person chooses to leave, there's a particular amount of money that is tied to that time frame.
Has there been enough time, like with Deer Valley, where they don't have it to show? I mean, the whole thing with liquidated damages is you have stability in the district. Has there been enough time passed to show if them not having it actually they lose more teachers?
I do not have quantitative data on that. I simply have qualitative and talking with the different directors. The conversations that I had were more so with Washington School District as well as Paradise Valley. Their stance is one that's pretty simple. If you don't want to be here with us, we may not consider wanting you to be here as well, right? They want their employees who want to be there with them, and so they work with those employees to exit in the best way possible. I did not get a sense from them that the liquidated damage is causing people to stay. I will tell you from a Peoria standpoint, what I observed last school year, is that we do have employees that really do consider what the liquidated damages might be. And we did have some that I know that did maintain and finish their contract prior to exiting our district.
All right. Yeah. Mrs. Connect, do you have comments?
I do. This has been a painful thing to think about since 2011, when it first came to be. I agree with you, Mrs. Pingarelli, that the purpose of this is to keep the district from being left high and dry in the middle of a year. And I'm looking at these bullet points, and I'm saying, with the exception of the first one, really, none of this has to do with liquidated damages. If a person gets sick, or a person has to move, or a person takes another job, whether or not we charge them liquidated damages does not keep the district from being left high and dry. It doesn't solve the problem. And I recognize that we can't really look at the data, because since the time that we've implemented this policy, the teacher crisis has grown. So we're not looking at a level playing field in which to evaluate whether or not this is effective. When it gets down to it, I think the ultimate decision, when an employee feels the need to come to the school board, my thought, my sense, and what has caused me angst is we're talking to career educators, and who we know in the state of Arizona are not paid enough money. And the thought of us taking money away from them makes me very, very uncomfortable. I think of all the options that you've listed, and this is something that we've talked about before, the one I'm most comfortable with is eliminating the liquidated damages and having faith in career educators, like I always have, to do what's in the best interest of the kids that are in their charge.
Mrs. Sejar-Martinez?
This, we look at, and we've had conversations, I appreciate Dr. Davison communicating with me, because I come from all those things that you described, stability for our district, protecting our kids ultimately, and did it make a decision when I left? Yes, it did. I stayed here, finished out my contract. I was blessed to have a plan that allowed me to do that. However, if we're going to protect our profession, which is educating and valuing educators and people choosing Peoria, and we are going to state as Peoria Unified that we are teacher-friendly districts, I would agree that eliminating the liquidated damages policy altogether would be in our best interest.
Mrs. Doan?
I'm still thinking about it.
Mr. Sandoval?
So I'm going to go full circle, and I promise I'll be quick. But I agree with Kathy and Monica. One of the things that I've always said, as an organization, I mean, we're a world-class district where we need to be able to hang our hat on the fact that we're providing safe, supportive environments for all of our teachers, staff, administrators, et cetera. That's what will keep individuals here within the district. Never a fan of being punitive to keep individuals on staff. I would agree. When if an individual gets a promotion or wants to leave, I don't believe that the liquidated damage would stop them from doing so. That said, I would absolutely, be a proponent of eliminating the liquidated damages altogether, knowing that, teachers are in this, for one thing, and that is to impact lasting change, in our youth, and putting them on a path of success. I think as a district, again, we need to be confident in the, in the culture that we establish, for our staff. Truly, that's more enduring And that's going to continue to keep individuals here for the right reasons. And then again, if they do plan on leaving after years, whether it be to another district or promotion or maybe even a different career path, what a better walking billboard for us to attract, additional teachers to this district.
Pingrelli, I think it's worth reiterating what Dr. Davidson said, and that is, we don't want teachers in our classrooms who don't want to be there. That is a huge disservice to our students, because we've all worked with people who didn't want to be in the job they held, and it's not a positive experience. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
Mrs. Pingrelli, there's one more topic we have not addressed as a governing board is mitigating risks. The more variables that we add and that we're not consistent and we're giving the opportunity to waive liquidative damage here or there, we're opening ourselves to litigation, because at some point somebody could say, well, you're not being fair or equal. Here with this policy, the governing board has upheld most, and it's been pretty straightforward, black and white, you either do it or you don't, and then that's the end of it. But if we start adding, well, if you meet this scenario, you meet this scenario, pretty soon we're going to start to see an influx of contestant, and we're going to open ourselves up for litigation.
If I might add, President Pingarelli, the policy, our current policy, as well as the ASBA policy, has the one caveat there that if you do leave us high and dry, you do break your contract, we do have the opportunity to present unprofessional behavior to the Arizona Department of Education in their investigative unit. And I do that currently, so that's not a new practice. But I just want to let you know, if you were to give us guidance on changing policy the way I've heard three of you recommend, that is the one piece that I would ask that we remain for those people that don't allow us to take into consideration the needs of the students.
Be worth, there's nothing to say we can't reinstate the policy if there's some catastrophic failure or something, I think it would be worth giving the benefit of the doubt to our teachers.
And what you're saying is true. I mean, if somebody does exit a contract that was signed, I mean, that's the truth. We would just be telling the truth. That's not a punitive thing, that's a factual thing.
Well, I guess I'm the odd one out tonight. I still believe in the liquidated damages, even though I know that this past year, the people who've come before us has been heart-wrenching to look at them and say no. That being said, I do believe it does maintain a certain amount of stability in the district. I think that the amount is too high. I guess I understand your point, Mrs. Martinez, about, giving flexibility, but I'm more in line to give the superintendent or HR a little bit of flexibility, but I understand that that could cause the district issues in the future.
It's too subjective.
Yeah. But, so I mean, that's where I'm coming from, but it seems like I'm in the minority for the board this evening, so.
I think it's worth
Dr. Stifler, I know we've spoken in the past about the people who've, we've had to put liquidated damages on.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we talked if there was a little flexibility that a lot of them would not have been.
The four most difficult ones that came before the board would have been waived,
Okay,
had there been the flexibility within the policy, but there was not the flexibility within the policy. Respectfully say as well that this is not just the policy, this is also the contract language, which we bring before you as well. So it's both pieces.
right.
It's both pieces. And so very soon, we're due to work and make sure that we have appropriate contract language for next year. So this is timely. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez, for making sure that this comes up now. but we're going to have to, even if we're not quite all on the same page here, we're going to have to bring something before you regarding contract language in a month, 2 months maybe. The policy could change or not change over time, but the contract piece is going to have to come back before you. There's no other way around that before Christmas.
With that, I might add, I'd certainly like our contract language to be aligned with our policy. So that would be an optimal scenario that we
Would
could.
be. But I'm just saying, it's 2 steps here.
Okay, although, given this conversation, if we decided not to change the contracts and everybody who was subjected to them, we agree that we don't want them and the liquidated damages anymore, we could just waive them all.
Yes, ma'am.
And that would save the staff members changing all those contracts.
Mrs. Pengarelli? But just to highlight the motion, we chose not to proceed with this school year, to leave it as is and going forward for future contracts. Just to just to highlight, so it sounds to me that at the end of this meeting, we'll need to bring up another agenda item to.
Administration, yes, ma'am. Administration is hoping to be able to understand where the board is so that we can bring a recommendation before you that could pass. We were not successful when we did that before. We always want to be, and so we're grateful for this conversation.
Did it do the trick?
Find a way.
I know, I agree that it should be brought back very soon.
It is our regular practice as well to bring the contract language before you.
Does that give you enough guidance?
I
think-
believe I have guidance. I'll work closely with our superintendent to bring you something, President Pingarelli and members of the board, that, as Dr. Stifler said, we'd like to see get passed. That would allow us to keep that language and that policy aligned and move forward on behalf of our employees.
Well,
Perhaps,
thank
Mrs.
Thank you,
Pingarelli,
yes.
perhaps the recommendation that comes forward, we haven't gone that far, as I've been listening, looks like a lower number in the contract on liquidated damages and some increased flexibility within the policy for special circumstances. We'll work with attorneys, we'll bring that forward, but I think that seems to be the middle ground that I heard tonight.
like the majority want to get away from it completely.
I would agree.
I go back to, I'm not sure that these conditions are ones that will be affected by liquidated damages or not. And if it doesn't meet the primary objective, which is not leaving us high and dry, then what's the point?
Okay, I think we got it, Carter.
Yes, sir.
Very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next agenda item number 21, World Language Programs and Spanish Immersion. Ms. Kintrabell? Welcome this evening.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'd like to go ahead and get started. I brought some notes to talk about world language programs and Spanish immersion, the program that we have had in place at Santa Fe. Tonight, I would like, wait a minute, am I in charge of this? Oh, I haven't done this before. That's fabulous. Thank you. Tonight, I'm going to talk about world language course offerings and our participation rates in both our high school courses and the immersion model at Santa Fe. We have a new course that I'm really impressed with, thanks to Kristen Vandewater and her team, the World History course description. That's a high school course in Spanish immersion at Peoria High School. And finally, I think we really want to take a moment and celebrate student achievement on a Spanish competency test of kids that went to Santa Fe and in fact are now in our high schools and taking some very exciting courses. So the first thing I'd like to share is the world language course offerings at the high school. These have grown over the years because as kids enter in and take French 1 or German 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., more classes are needing to be offered because we have kids that actually want to take Spanish 5, etc. So we've been building the more difficult, rigorous courses in world language over a period of time. All of these, most all of these courses have an honors or dual enrollment option. And we also work when kids take course offerings at the college level. I was recently in a conversation about kids who would like to take Chinese and working with our colleges to give the kids that dual enrollment credit. So we're having conversations about that as well. There's strong participation rates in world language. I was pretty impressed with this, being new to Peoria. The reason for that is we are a high school district that doesn't require foreign language for graduation. But there is a lot of participation. The kids get elective credit to take these courses, and you kind of just saw through the rigor, these courses can become quite difficult for kids, but they're sticking with that and advancing through world language courses and programs. So if you can just look at some of that over the past 3 years, we see a pretty steady increase in students that are taking world language course offerings. Breaking that down, there is participation rates in world language on this particular slide. You can tell, obviously, it makes sense that most of our kids are participating in the Spanish program. You can also see what I referred to a little bit earlier as kids, and I think it's in French. I was looking at this data with Kristen, as the child who took the French advanced language and literacy course advanced through, eventually that one child wanted that next level class in French. So we've been developing, again, more and more rigorous courses as kids proceed through high school. I want to switch now to the Santa Fe Spanish Immersion Program. This program is supervised programmatically by Linda Pallas. We have had a very recent conversation with her and Kelly Glass. She's in charge of ELL and the exceptionality kids in our district, as well as Kristen Vandewater. Right when the program opened, it was a 50-50 model, and that meant that 50% of the day, students learned in English. The other 50% of the day, students learned in Spanish. All students who participated in the Spanish immersion part of this program are required to be fluent English speakers. There's also obviously a parent choice, and you'll see that as pretty strong. There's a lot of tradition at that school. I was there the first day and saw a lot of teachers, parents who said, I went here, my child's going here, et cetera. There's also a lot of interest, and that is the enrollment has grown over time from open enrollment and outside the school district. We are working to support the new principal. John Nitschke could not be here tonight. His son had his first soccer game, so we let him off the hook. We are working with him very soon. This team is going to be going over and doing some walkthroughs, looking at the program and supporting the teachers that are teaching in the Spanish immersion program. This is an enrollment slide that kind of shows a little bit of an increase over time at Santa Fe in both a regularly enrolled student and a student that is enrolled in the Spanish immersion. And again, there's the column with the out-of-district. So it is something that our greater community is interested in. This probably is something I haven't seen before. I'm not sure if this is a trend, but I think it's extremely exciting. This past year, Kristen worked to develop with a teacher. This teacher is Craig Day. He is certified in history, and he's also certified in Spanish, so he has the dual certification. Kristen worked with her team and this teacher to develop a world history Spanish immersion class. So this is the first class at Peoria High School that's taught completely in Spanish. I'm really excited about this because if you look down on the course, that's at the actual course description, the prerequisite to get into this course has to be a passing grade in Spanish 2, or we offer a Spanish 2 competency test. So if the kids score 70% or better on a Spanish competency test, they're allowed to get in this class. The children that participate in this class, once they successfully complete the course, will earn 1 core credit for Spanish 3 and 1 core credit for world history with this class. What I'm really excited about is this celebration. We currently have 22 students from Santa Fe who went through the program and are now at Peoria High School. They're in grades 9 through 11. All of them passed the competency test in Spanish 2, which means they learned enough language to pass the competency test at 70% or higher to participate in this world history Spanish immersion course. I have the list of kids here, and I know I can't put their names up there, but I'm really excited because I want to go and meet these kids. The really interesting thing about it, when I look at their competency test scores, this is 91, 93, 95, 90, 87. So these kids didn't squeak by. They really performed very well on the competency assessment. And it also is a competency test that measures listening, speaking, reading, and writing, much like you would see an Azella test, but this is a lot of Spanish content. So being new, I was incredibly impressed at this program. I'm really anxious to dig in and continue to take a look at that. And we will be coming back in October. I know we are all working on the equity challenge, and I'm excited to bring back and come back with Wendy and some of those folks to talk more about our ESL students in the district. Kristen and I were talking about this, and we really began to talk about how exciting the world language instruction in our district is and how it really enhances the global competency skills that kids need as they prepare for their future. Kristen, did I leave anything out? I knew it. Questions, comments?
Let's start with Mrs. Doan.
When you give all those numbers for the language classes, that's a semester? Like Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 is just a full year? They're semester long. All right. See, when I was in school, it was a whole year. All right, so I would like to say I'm very excited about this. I have visited the Spanish immersion and talked with the children in there and the teachers, and I personally know one young lady that just graduated from Santa Fe that went through. I'm going to ask her if she's doing this this new, what is that? Yeah, the world history. I'm gonna ask her, but this is very exciting to me because, I mean, all the studies show that the immersion works better than just about any other method of teaching. I have nieces that were raised in Germany and they speak the German and the English just like that, you know, just because they just went to German school. They didn't have any special English classes for them, you know, so I'm really excited about this, and I like to see this happening in our district.
Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, agreed, absolutely. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, what a better way to, I think you said it earlier, to really engage our students in a way that informs them and certainly influences cultural, I guess cultural sensitivity more than anything else. I mean, you take a look at our nation and certainly our state and the diversity, you know, it's something that, you know, I agree would make them very successful, you know, throughout the college career and life. I do have you know, I know it sounds like Peoria has kind of been the focus as far as the numbers, and it'd be interesting to kind of take a look at, you know, how this program certainly, you know, expands into the other schools and to understand the success there as well. I think the impact of this type of program across all of our schools is certainly invaluable to our students. So Kristen, Ms. Bell, thank you both, you know, very much. I think this is well thought out. And again, you know, something that just expands on the horizons of our students.
Speaking of that cultural thing, I knew I would leave something out. In the participation rates, we have had a child who's completed Spanish 5 honors. So again, and Kristen's and her team's response to having that child continue to be able to take another class, there was a class developed, Spanish Advanced Language and Literature. It's an honors class, and it does dig a lot more deeply into the culture. Adds a cultural piece to the language.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, Ms. Pringle, I apologize. There was another point earlier, and you showed a listing of all the high schools, I believe, and it showed kind of the participation rates. And I think Liberty was, you know, about, you know, if I'm not mistaken, about 20, maybe 30% higher than maybe the second highest school. I'm not sure if that was Spanish or the immersion program, but any thoughts on, I know Liberty's a, you know, large campus, but I mean, any thoughts on, you know, why the participation rate on that campus was greater?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I can defer to Kristen. Would you know? Just the numbers?
Just the larger,
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, the participation rate is great. I was just curious if it was just better, highly promoted, you know, on that campus versus the others. But, you know, it just seems significantly higher than
Yeah,
the
good
second
point.
highest.
We'll look at it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
So I'm wondering if the high participation rate that we enjoy is because even though we don't require it, I think many colleges and universities do. So I think that's a reflection of good guidance from our counselors, that they're making sure that the kids have what they need when they get to high school. I'm very pleased to see this on the agenda tonight. It's an issue that I care deeply about. I started my teaching career in an ESL classroom, actually in a bilingual classroom, concurrent bilingual, when it wasn't illegal to teach Spanish kids in Spanish, which leads me to one of my frustrations. You mentioned, for example, and this is something that I knew, that only kids who are fluent in English can get in the program. And it seems to me that we're shortchanging kids who maybe their first English is Spanish, because they could be gaining from the immersion, the English immersion part that they are getting on the second half of the day, just like the English-speaking kids are benefiting from the Spanish that they're getting from half the day. And in addition to that, the English and Spanish speakers could be speaking to each other in kid talk and developing that as well. So I think there may be some legal issues with that.
There are.
But I know that, but it's a frustration, and I think we're doing kids a disservice, we in Arizona, not here in PUSD. I think the scores that are coming out of Santa Fe is proof positive that what we're doing is working.
Yes.
And I'm so pleased to see that. And I would like to be able to move some of that success, even outside of this world history program, into some of our other world language programming in the high schools. Maybe this is a reflection of my kids and not the program, but they didn't retain much of their second language from high school. And so I know every year is different, every student is different, and every teacher is different, but I would like us to pursue ways to ensure that our students' time is effective. So when they come out of 2 years of Spanish or 2 years of French or 2 years of German, that they actually they have spent their time, they've done the work, and that they've actually acquired some language. So I would like to see that. What else was I going to say? Oh, why is this so important? Because we know that for our students to be globally competitive, that being monolingual is a deficit. And so anything we can do to make them competitive in the world is a good thing. So it looks like we're doing some very positive things. I would love to see our dual language program expanded because we know it's successful.
One of the things about that success and how well the kids are doing, this particular class, it's recommended that it is for 10th graders, sophomores or above. From Santa Fe, we have 13 ninth graders that scored in that 90th, 80th percentile that are in that class, right, coming into high school. So that expansion seems like it's going to keep going only because the kids are. So we have to keep up with those rigorous coursework options for them to select.
And that, again, I think, is a reflection of us valuing and respecting the time that they've put into it. You know, we don't want to say to them, no, you need to wait a year before we can keep you growing on that path. No, you're doing a good job. Let's capitalize on the momentum.
Right.
Thank you. Mrs. Sejar Martinez?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bell, for the presentation and for all your work, Ms. Van Water. No doubt about Ms. Connect highlighting being a global competitor. I believe our Governor Ducey has also highlighted that he wants Arizona to be a global competitor, and this is one way Peoria Unified can set the benchmark to be that trendsetter and to be innovative. I would like to see expanded, but at the elementary level. I will vouch for you on behalf of taking Spanish every single year. I took it in college every single year, and I am not bilingual. My parents, there's some culture reasoning for that and family upbringing. However, it is a disservice. And communication, the more people we can touch through languages, it's better for our students to be competitive.
Their engagement?
And engagement and just learning each other another way to communicate. So I want more, but I want it earlier. I want it at more schools. It's disheartening to see it only at Santa Fe in our southern school. I would love to see it at the northern side and earlier. I can't say that enough. I want to sound like Dr. Stifler, where he says it 3 times, earlier, earlier. Because you have to be immersed, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And so I would also like to see a future partnership with International School of Management. They're down the street. We have teachers who have taught in Peoria Unified and also taught at that school. That would be a great way to bridge that gap with the university as well. And I want to highlight for the community that this program is not an ESL program. This program is focusing on grammar and content. And it's definitely different than what we see what is being told about the Azella, as I taught all my years except for my last year in English as a second language. The last thing I would like to see as we continue to develop this program is to emulate what CTE requirements are, is to have that certification. If our students are getting it from early on, K-8, and then they go into high school and take all these courses, there are translator and interpreter courses and certifications that you can take, and when you walk out of the high school level, they'll be able to work for our current Maricopa County and start jobs off of $30 an hour. And with that being said, they can still go to school and be an interpreter, help their community, help do their civic duty, and also come on top with finance, the ability to save for the future. So I would like to see some certifications included, similar to what CTE offers for their kids. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, our daughter was in Spanish, and my husband and I pushed her through, even though she didn't want to, I don't think. But it did save a lot of money in college. So, we do appreciate all the programs, and I'm glad to see they're expanding. So thank you very much. Thank both of you.
One other comment, if I may, Mrs. Pingarelli. Sorry, I know you were about to wrap that up. I have heard anecdotes of students who got to a certain level, a high level of second language acquisition in our high schools, and then because of staffing or whatever, they weren't able to stay at their home campus and pursue that last step. And I think in some cases, we ask students to actually drive to another campus to have access to a teacher. I think this is an area, Dr. Stifler, with your individualized learning and your embracing of technology, I would much rather see through Skype or whatever, some sort of video education and conferencing, to bring the instructor to the student rather than ask the students to drive.
Mrs. Pingarelli, Mrs. Connect, members of the board, absolutely. Ms. Vanderwater and I had a conversation as well. Sometimes it's the college can help us as well.
Yeah.
And we don't offer that. And just because we had never dreamed that a kid could get that far, and we didn't write it out ahead of time, doesn't mean that we shouldn't allow them to get that from the university as well.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next agenda item number 22, discussion on governing board member absence at a regular board meeting. Would like to start out.
I can.
Yeah.
So as we've gone to different governing board conferences, it's basically, we need to clarify what the expectation is for our board, what we want. I've seen if you're absent, you don't have a vote, and I've also seen that if you're absent, you can call in. So I would just like to see what my governing board members would like to do in consistency so that that expectation can be set going forward.
Well, I'll start this off. I think that all 5 governing board members should have an input if they're not here or not, if they can call in. I think that we are a board of 5, and all 5 should have the ability to vote. Mrs. Connect, do you have?
Yeah, I've called in, I've been at board meetings where others have called in, and I will tell you that it is not necessarily an effective way to have conversation. In fact, it's not. And here's the thing about that. If a board member has something else so important that he or she can't be at the board meeting, it's probably too important to actually call in. That doesn't mean that he or she shouldn't be part of the conversation, and there's a lot of ways around that. Certainly, there have been times when I've called in, well, I've only called in a long time ago, and I've stopped calling in because I found it to be ineffective and really cumbersome. However, I would say if there's a very contentious or a close issue, that might be something worthy of calling in. And we should all be very aware that if we must be absent and something happens at the school board meeting that we want to be revisited, we have the opportunity to request that it is revisited when we return. So those are my thoughts on it.
Just a quick question to that comment. But two governing board members have to agree to bring it back, though, right? Is that correct?
I believe in Robert's Rules of Order, if you're absent, you can request that you revisit something in your
I would
absence.
have to look that up.
Does anyone else know that?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Mrs. Doan, do you have more comments?
Seriously, if one of us was absent and wanted to revisit it, I'm not going to vote against that. I'm going to say sure.
And if it was a 4-0 vote and you were the outlier, you probably would say, well, darn, probably you'd be outnumbered anyway.
I mean, I'm not going to play politics with this board. We are a board. We're an entity. And we should each have our say, and just because someone is ill or out of town doesn't mean they don't get their say.
Absolutely.
So,
Mrs. Pingarelli, two things to offer. One, if somebody calls in telephonically, I would say that they are not absent, that they are attending the meeting, and so we would need to be careful in the language. If they're participating in the meeting, they're not absent.
right.
If it's deemed appropriate by this board to do that, which is satisfactory and is commonly done, and has the limitations. I have also seen, what I haven't heard come up before is, I have seen governing board members who couldn't be at a meeting and wrote out something, gave it to another governing board member to present their position, and they lived by the vote by whatever it was. I'm not recommending or not, I'm just saying I have seen that before.
I have too.
And so you can't give your vote by proxy to someone else, and that would be certainly inappropriate. But to read, much like you could read a statement from anyone in the community, or your own statement, as you did tonight, Mrs. Pingarelli, I've seen that before as well.
And I will say, as long as I've been on this board, every iteration of the board has had seated very professional, committed individuals who have not taken this position for granted and been reckless about absences. I think we've all demonstrated our commitment to this work, so that's a good thing.
Mrs.
I was gonna
Pingarelli?
go to-
Oh, David?
David
Okay.
hasn't had a chance yet. Mr. Sandoval.
Sorry, I'm getting excited.
No, I mean, it's, obviously, we certainly don't want these meetings and any of our protocol to be counterproductive, meaning the call-in, and I agree, I've called in other board meetings, it's tough. However, dependent upon the subject matter, the line items, if the individual can call in, for that particular subject, based on its importance and severity, I think that makes sense. But, I mean, to Kathy's point, I think, and I think Judy mentioned it as well, certainly all of our voices are important and certainly valued. And, having the flexibility to, whether it's, writing a letter in response to, line items and having it read by another individual or calling in or, requesting a particular line item be brought back at a future board meeting. I think I would agree with Judy. I would absolutely be open and understandable to those who were absent to bring those line items back so they can comment accordingly. So, I think just having that flexibility is, it seems to be somewhat common within the board.
Mrs. Sarah Martinez?
Okay. So to highlight the bring it back option, I know our administration, our governing board has agreed that we want to try to shorten our business meetings to 1.5 hours, or roughly, give or take. That's a work in progress, and
Goal.
yeah. And if we bring back items, that would be one concerning respecting everybody's time. The other thing, and to highlight the video conference for our teachers, we should be able to have that same flexibility for our administration and governing board members to video conference in the use of technology. Some of us work. Me personally, I've had an opportunity to travel this year, and I foresee that in the later future. And I will still want to have that opportunity to vote, to have that vote. I know one last semester, it was a 2-2 vote. If we would have had a governing board member here to offer that vote, then that situation may have turned out different instead of a split and it died. But consistency and whatever my peers would like to proceed with, I will support that.
Mrs. Pingarelli?
Yes.
Actually, you and Mrs. Ceja Martinez received an email today inviting you to Teams, which is a new Microsoft product that allows for just that, for, as we discussed earlier, for agenda setting. Theoretically, there's no reason why it couldn't be used during a governing board meeting as well, speaking to exactly what Mrs. Ceja Martinez was saying, providing, of course, that somebody had sufficient bandwidth wherever they were to make it work, which can be very frustrating should they not have that.
Are you talking about strictly board meetings, or are you talking about agenda planning meetings?
I was
Because-
conflating the two.
Because I do believe we have policy that if one of the individuals is absent from the agenda setting, that he or she can appoint somebody else on the board to take his or her place.
Okay.
So with that being said, is this this is information only, so not a voting item? So we just have to decide if we are going to chime in when we're absent or continue, and if a governing board member is absent, decide to call it back, if it's that important, if it ends up being a split vote, per se.
I don't see a need to change it. If anyone wants to call in when they're absent, they can do that.
Okay.
I'll go with that to keep the flexibility, so everybody has
But
an
I'm
option.
just going to reiterate, it doesn't necessarily add to the conversation to have somebody on the phone. It's very cumbersome.
I have not done that before.
I have a question. So we live stream everything, and one of the meetings I was in Flagstaff, and I sent Danielle a message and said, I can't hear Dr. Stifler, and that's because you didn't have your microphone on. It was at the very end. But if I'm watching it, and let's say I don't have anything to say, and I just want to vote, could I email it?
I would recommend you not do that. I would recommend that we were very transparent, a word that's been used many times tonight, that everybody could tell that you were participating, if it was you, for instance, that you were participating in the meeting all the way along, whether it be telephonically,
Perfect.
whether it be Skyping, whether it be in person, so that nobody could ask, where did that come from?
Perfect. Okay. Excellent.
So you would suggest that a person comes from, if they're calling in, it would be from start to finish, not calling in for just a particular vote?
I would leave it up to the board chair, and I've seen people for the first part of the meeting, and then it just gets so frustrating, they drop off at the end.
That's what I've seen.
And then, then that speaks to agenda preparation to put
Okay.
the most,
Pressing
the pressing
item
things
first. Okay.
up first.
Okay.
We've had people that called in when they knew that a vote was
Right.
due, or leave after a certain vote because they had to be somewhere else.
Right.
Too, so that was, and it was all above board.
Okay, so I
Pun
think,
intended.
yeah, the consensus is flexibility, and ability to call in if needed, or to bring it back at a later date. So, okay. All right, any other discussion? Okay. Next agenda item. Agenda item number 23, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities. Dr. Stifler?
Mrs. Pingarelli, members of the board, September 26th is the National Voter Registration Day. I think it's an awesome thing that's help everyone become registered to vote. On A through F, the latest timeline, and I stress latest timeline. We've had latest timeline and latest timeline and latest timeline and latest timeline since at least April. I'm not holding you responsible for that, Wendy. 7 September 22nd, there's a study session planned to review validated data from ADE and discuss any alternative models. On September 25th, the state board is scheduled, agended to set the cut points needed for each letter grade. On the week of September 25th, schools will receive the embargoed letter grades. On October 9th, letter grades will be released to the public. The differential in there is for schools to say, hey, you didn't factor the data right, and to do that. But there's honestly, very little room to appeal. October through November, review appeals of traditional letter grades. November through December, review the impact data for enhancements, because it's anticipated that whatever decisions are made will have to be revisited for next year, as this is the first year for a new system. Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, those funds that come with ESSA, Congress still has not moved on that. The end of the fiscal year, more importantly, the beginning of the new fiscal year is October 1. I haven't perhaps shared the impact of this as much as I should. There's roughly $2 million being withheld from our schools at this point because we don't have a way to pay it back. Should we expend the money that is due by formula as we know it now, that if Congress deletes the program? And so that's a very difficult thing. I expect that the state of Arizona will have to deal with this. There will be, by law, we'll have a new fiscal year, October 1. Whether Congress acts or not, whether ADE acts or not, it will become October 1, and it will be a new fiscal year. We'll have to have a budget to be able to do that. It's a very difficult place. It's a very difficult place that our schools are in as well. That would be my report.
So do we have representatives speaking on our behalf to that issue?
I don't.
With our elected officials?
It doesn't feel like that, Mrs. Connect.
Okay. We can all do that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, let me be more. Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education for the United States, and the President of the United States had recommended that Title II be no longer funded. I believe it was the Senate Committee of Education said no to that it would be, but that they would not accept that kind of a cut. And I don't believe there's been any movement since then. Okay. That was about 2 weeks ago.
All right, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, next item. Item number 24, requests for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Mrs. Doan?
I don't have anything tonight.
Mr. Sandoval?
None at the moment, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Connect?
I'd like this board to discuss travel reimbursement for teachers.
I second that.
Okay.
Mrs. Sejar Martinez?
I would like to have the opportunity to finalize and approve the bond selection committee process and timeframes.
I will second that one.
Would you please say that again?
Finalize and approve the bond selection committee process and timeframes.
Okay.
Okay, I also have one. I would like to see a presentation on all costs related to the implementation of personalized learning, including vendor contracts, staff travel for training, technology purchases, and any other category related to the district's initiative in this area. What are estimated costs into the next school year? I would also like to learn how we would better inform the community regarding the benefits of personalized learning. And I can give you this if you'd like.
That'd be helpful.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
I have a full plate. All right, any other items? No. Next agenda item. Agenda item number 25, Budget Facilities Planning and Construction Report. Can we pull that one up? And this is on our website for anybody that would like to further view it. Next agenda item. upcoming meetings and events. And that one is also on our website. I just wanted to point out, October 18th is the Fall Patron Tour at Ironwood High School. If anybody would like to go, it's a very good event.
And can I jump in?
You
Mrs.
can.
Pangarelli? Please invite 6th and 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade families, CTE, share, 7th and 8th grade are welcome. It's at Centennial High School. It's phenomenal. And if you would like to volunteer, which I know all of you do, Dr. Beltram would love volunteers.
Thank you. I mentioned that last time, so I think we're going to mention it every time. All right, next agenda item. Draft agenda for September 28th, 2017, regular board meeting. It might get a little bit larger than this. And this is also on our website. Next agenda item. Board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. Does any board member need to go back and discuss any item we've discussed in the 2 hours and 7 minutes so far? Nope. Okay, all right. Next agenda item number 29, consideration of adjournment. We need a motion, and if Kathy's right now.
That we adjourn the meeting.
Needed. Members, please cast your vote.
Dr. Stifler,
Yes, ma'am. Wait.
I want to come to this, but I'm not 100% sure that I'm.
And we pass 5-0. See you here in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.